these young men coming back from these useless wars. And they're going to have a tough time denying them things that do work for them, whether they're legal or not.
Didn't the Canadian Health Ministry or something, don't they have some studies where they've recognized that the use of cannabis in the first, 6 to 8 months by veterans who've been diagnosed, have like an 80% greater likelihood to acclimate without arrest or divorce or what have you? I thought there was some kind of, they were beginning to recognize it more.
That may be. I'm unacquainted with that. I think the situation with Canada is very difficult. Before Harper came to power there, the Canadians were moving much faster than we toward legalization. And then Mr. Harper, who was a George W. Bush wannabe, still in office, has set all that back so far. And nevertheless, there are thousands of what are called exemptees, people who have permission from the government, patients who have permission to get it from Health Canada, of course. And while they complained about the quality of the cannabis that Health Canada provides, it is nevertheless illegal for them to use it, and the government doesn't answer them.
We use this metaphor. I've been using it. And I use it in a jury trial. When I finally was able to talk about medical marijuana, but these referendums, that these initiatives that become constitutional amendments or what have you. When they pass, I've used this metaphor of the chickens are passing a law, that is telling the foxes that they have to treat the chickens differently, and it's a law that protects the chickens, and then they give it back to the foxes who are in charge of implementing it. They didn't want the law to be changed in the first place. They liked the law as it was, and then they're not going to follow it. And that's kind of how it's becoming, especially in these medical marijuana states. But yet you still see this other. What do you see? Are you optimistic, pessimistic with this going? It's a very interesting time right now with the Obama.
I am optimistic. Look what's going on in California now. There are 3 pieces of or petitions, and one of them is regulate marijuana like wine. And there's another one, I can't remember its title, and they are virtually legalize it. Just legalize it. And I think we're going to see more of that as this, the Gallup poll, as I told you, was not 50% now are in favor of getting rid of the prohibition. Now that's going up exponentially. It was 12% when I published Marijuana Reconsidered in 1971. And it stayed pretty flat. And in the last few years, it's been going up exponentially. Just last year, it was 45%. Now it's up to 50%. That's enormous. When you consider for years and years, the highest it would go was just 26%. It's going up rapidly. So that's creating a very unstable situation when you've got people in the politics of the thing saying no, and you're getting to the point where a majority of the people are saying yes.
Michigan
not going to last.
Michigan in 2008 passed a ballot initiative, and this year right now there's a petition drive to repeal prohibition or repeal the criminalization of marijuana. To allow people over the age of 21 to possess and grow. And the website for everyone that wants to get involved, of course, is repeal.org. But
repealtoday.org.
Repealtoday.org. I apologize. But unlike I think in California, they had an interesting, when it was on the ballot for them to legalize, they found the patients, the medical marijuana community at odds with the legalizers to a certain degree. There was a certain, argument. It was a very challenged in some areas. In Michigan, we've had such a difficult time with the implementation of the Medical Marijuana Act itself, and because it's been so nitpicked and criminalized instead of, considered a public health issue, that, the patient and caregiver community, the entire medical marijuana community is behind the legalization, because it's the only way that, patients can be protected. I mean, from that particular aspect. But how do you see these things playing out? I mean, I think there's several states that have legalization on the ballot, and then what happens after that?
Well, there are probably about a dozen states that are considering medical marijuana. In fact, by 2013, I think we will have it in Massachusetts. But you see, what's happened, I think a lot of these states, like New Jersey, New Jersey passed a law, but they're having a hell of a time implementing it because how should it be written? And I think a lot of the people, let's say in New Jersey and in other states which have done this, want to have much more restricted use of it as a medicine. And to me, this, they see the situation in California where, in fact, anybody can get a card. You can go to your doctor. I don't mean to say there are some very serious doctors about this, and they do what they should do. They get a full medical history. They do an exam, and you don't go to a doctor who doesn't know something about marijuana. There are some of them out there, and then they'll write the not. But there are many doctors. You go in and say, "Oh, doctor, I've got a back pain." Okay, here's your card, or here's the letter you need to get the card. Now, as a consequence, many people in California who do not have truly a medical need for it are getting it. That doesn't bother me at all because I think anybody who wants to use it should be. But for people, legislators in other states who are looking at this, they're seeing it go rampant, and everybody will be using it for purposes we do not approve of. Well, you see, it's a mistake to let legislators arrogate to themselves the decision of what symptoms and syndromes people should be allowed to the use of marijuana to treat. What legislature is going to say yes, it's okay for women to use it for premenstrual syndrome, and it's very useful in premenstrual. Ask Queen Victoria, but the answer is going to be no. And there are so many other things. How many would say it is sometimes useful in treating intractable hiccups, for example? How many legislators are going to allow that in there? The only way that the full medical potential of this drug will be known, will be realized, the potential will be realized, is when the drug is free of the prohibition. And people can grow their own. They'll have the choice of pharmaceuticals, but they'll have the choice of growing their own. And this is when it will be fully realized just how useful this is. But you may have heard of Gatewood Galbraith. He was the man that ran for governor in Kentucky and others. He was a very keen advocate of medical marijuana. And one time when I was testifying for him in that state, he asked me if, and this was years ago, just after I came out with a book in the first edition in 1993 of Marijuana Big Medicine. He said, won't this use of marijuana significantly reduce the cost of medicines that are bought from the pharmaceutical companies, and therefore the burden on the U.S. government and its support of various medicinal programs? And I said, no, I didn't think it would. But mind you, that was early in my understanding of this. And now I think just the opposite. I think because it is such a remarkably versatile drug, useful in the treatment of so many symptoms and syndromes, it will cut down on the cost of medicine. Because many of the things that you have to buy an expensive pharmaceutical for it to treat, you will be able to do so with inexpensive, by that time, relatively inexpensive marijuana. So I think it's also a way of reducing our overall medical costs, and that's going to say something about the prohibition. It's also, if we regulate it like wine, the country can get some taxes on and so forth. There's every reason in the world to get rid of this prohibition.
Let me ask you this. What about marijuana use during pregnancy?
No problem. There's a woman by the name of Melanie Dreher, who I'll be very brief on this, as brief as she is a PhD nurse who studied marijuana in Jamaica. And what she did, she was interested in the question, you know, in Jamaica, there are the Rastafarians who use it as a religious capacity. There are the Ethiopians and Coptics, for whom it is also used religiously. And people in Jamaica use a lot of it. So she got two groups of Jamaican women who were pregnant just right in the early parts of their pregnancy and who used it regularly, daily. And the harder group to assemble was women also just early in their pregnancy who never used it. And she followed these women and then their offspring. And she tested the offspring regularly with a huge battery of tests. And she concluded that there is no problem with using it during pregnancy. She followed these kids for a long period of time. It isn't like, FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome, where a person who drinks during pregnancy is really risking an awful lot with her baby, an awful lot. There is no evidence, and hers is the best work for anybody who's interested in looking that up for him or herself. It's Melanie